habits. And for those of you who know, you can have a little mental vacation for a minute. For everybody else, the Swing Shift runs Hangout Habits every week at 10 a.m. Pacific. These are live and they're online. And our goal with these is to get you into the habit of working on your job search. And so every week we have a relevant topic. This week's is particularly relevant and timely. Our goal is to give you some actionable tips to help you get in the habit and focus on your job search, especially right now. It's easy for that to get lost in the bucket of, school is out, the kids are home, what phase is your, county or state in. So this can take a back burner, but it's really important to keep a cadence going. So we are here to help you do that. We'll talk a little bit about our speaker in a moment. So after our presentation, you'll go into breakout rooms, and we have a couple of things for you to talk about today. And that also gives you the opportunity to network online. And then, of course, we have our Facebook community page where you can talk with each other and focus on accountability. So just to give you a preview of what's coming up next week, we've got Carrie Morris, who is the VP at Simplicity Consulting, who's going to talk about, well, what are the pros and cons of working as a consultant for many people? That's an interesting opportunity. And I think our speaker today can talk to that as well. The week following, we're going to have a repeat and talk about networking. And then I'm so excited to have Aparna Ray, who's the principal consultant from Moving Beyond, to talk about how to spot a good DEI employer. And we also have Suzanne Mulder, who's director of learning at Bloomberg, who's going to talk about learning and development trends. So we've got some great speakers coming up, including today's. So let's talk about Heather while she listens. Heather Glynn is the managing director of online services or solutions delivery, at Blueprint Technologies. And some of you have maybe met with Heather in the past. She's been a great advocate for us in our program. She's going to talk today about resumes for the modern job search. And I always say this, Heather, when I introduce you, but Heather's career did not start in technology. She came from the wellness industry, where she was a spa and operations and corporate account manager at Pro Sports Club, and then did a pivot and started working at Blueprint about 6 years ago. And so Blueprint, if you're not familiar with them, is a technology solutions firm that provides strategy for end-to-end digital transformation, solution enabling products, strategic consulting and delivery, and value-added services. So Heather has rapidly moved up the ranks there after making a career turn, and she's doing it all while, managing kids. Yeah. She's my idol. And at this point, I'm going to hand things over to Heather, and she's going to talk with you about the current environment and things that are really pertinent as you work on your resume in your modern job search. So Heather, I'm going to stop sharing so you can start.
Awesome. I will start sharing here. When y'all can see my screen. Thanks, Nancy, for the introduction. I'm really excited to be back today to talk about resumes for the modern job search, because what's true today might not be true in 2 weeks or 2 months. So it's an ever-changing topic, and we always have great outcomes from these sessions. So thanks for having me back. Nancy already alluded to what Blueprint Technologies is, but just wanted to give you a little high level there. We are a technology firm that helps companies accelerate their success through digital transformation. There's a lot packed into that sentence, but essentially what we do is we leverage technologies to help the advancement of organizations. We are industry agnostic, meaning we work across multiple industries, everything from healthcare to government work, technology industry, obviously. telecommunications. So it spans. There's a lot that we do within that bucket. We're based out of Bellevue, Washington is our headquarter location, but we do have very successful delivery teams across the nation. So we have teams in the Dallas area, in Charlotte, and then we have talent present across the United States. So New York, Florida, California, Idaho. So we span across the organization. I've been with the company, as Nancy mentioned, just over 6 years, and we've grown tremendously in this time. So it's been an exciting part to be part of a entrepreneur type organization, very startup in nature. So before I jump in and get started with our agenda today, I just wanted to go over kind of what that looks like. So we'll start with resume types. Some of you have attended the Swing Shifts resume workshop that we partner with them on. We have an entire workshop around that. So we're going to touch on that really quick and talk about what the shift in the resume, the modern resume looks like. And then we'll jump into what trends we're seeing, what organizations are looking for, what you can do to maintain relevancy. And then lastly, we'll take a really quick look at what we're seeing in terms of who's hiring, both at Blueprint and then across multiple different sectors and industries. Really quick before we move on, I like to share just a quick statistic that I think a lot of people are not familiar with, but with the increase in unemployment rates right now, millions of people have lost their jobs. Your resume is important more than ever. What you say on your resume and how quick you can capture the attention of a recruiter is more important than ever. Recruiters will take a look at a resume for about 6 quick seconds before they decide to move on to the next resume in their stack, or before they decide to continue reviewing your resume and actually reaching out to you. So what your resume says a lot about you, and it's a great opportunity to capture the recruiter's attention now more than ever. So we're going to focus in on what you can do there today. Jumping into our next slide here, let me see. All right. Many of you who have attended our resume workshop have seen a version of this before. We typically talk about 3 different types of resumes. Chronological resume is what historically has been the most common. It's actually a reverse chronological order of your resume. It's great for highlighting work in a particular field or industry where you've shown progression through that industry. And it's also great to highlight related experience and industry familiarity. I'm going to jump to the functional resume because this is what we're actually seeing an increased trend around. This actually gives you the ability to focus on your skills, your accomplishments, and less focus on your roles and responsibilities, such as a chronological resume would demonstrate. It actually allows you to hone in on what you've done, what you're continuing to do to self-educate, what accomplishments you've achieved, and apply metrics and data that supports what that looks like. And that's very important today when people are trying to decide, how do I take these non-tangibles and put them in a resume to demonstrate my effectiveness in an organization? You know, there's not one of these types of resumes that's right and wrong. It's entirely dependent on what you're trying to portray or highlight for the particular field or industry that you're getting into. But functional resume, and specifically right now in this kind of trying time, we're seeing a lot more functional resumes because it's also good when you have a gap in your resume, which a lot of us are experiencing, unfortunately, right now. The last type of resume is combination resume or combined resume. It's exactly like it sounds, so I'm not going to focus too much on it. It is the combination of what we typically see, skills and experience at the top, followed by some reverse chronological order of your roles and responsibility, also supported by data and metrics that demonstrate your effectiveness as a leader in an organization. Before we move on to kind of what you can do to update your resume in today's environment, are there any questions? I know I went through the resume types really quickly, but there's a lot of great information that we want to get to today too. So I'll save the resume workshop content for that workshop later this year. But are there any questions either in the chat or anybody on the line here that has questions around that?
Yeah, we have one in the chat, Heather,
Okay.
that says, from Marielle, saying, do you recommend switching to a functional resume?
You know, that's a great question. Thank you. Today especially, I always recommend this. I always recommend having multiple different versions of your resume that resonate with what job or position that you're applying for. It's really important to know the position you're applying for and do some research around that, and we'll touch on that a little bit later. And then customize your resume to that particular organization or what that job description is calling out as the minimum requirements. There are some things on a resume right now that are still non-negotiables and may even be enhanced based on the competitive market. The non-negotiables are still the skills or trade or technical skills that you have. That's even enhanced more now than ever, but I would recommend, I'm not opposed to a chronological resume. It still very much adds value and demonstrates work experience. The functional resume allows you to be more creative in adjusting your resume to a particular industry. So perhaps you've got a 15-year career path in healthcare and you're considering pivoting to technology, which is sort of exactly what I did actually. I actually took my transferable skill sets that I knew were applicable in other industries, and I completed my functional resume for this particular job search that I had 6 years ago. So if you don't have a functional resume, it's not a bad idea to start playing around with what that could look like for yourself, and then reach out and get feedback from those people that are kind of in your network and in your community and ask for their feedback around it. Yeah, great question. All right.
One thing before you go forward, Heather, people are asking for examples of each of these. So maybe as follow-up, we could get examples to put
That's
up
great.
there.
So we, in our workshop, again, I'll mention the workshop, we do show actual resume examples and we kind of walk through them. So I do have that, and I'm more than happy, Nancy and Sarah, if you've got those, I think you've got kind of the PDF version of that. If you want me to send that your way, you can absolutely share that. That's fine.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So just some really quick tips as you're planning and building out your resume. You definitely want to focus on your professional achievements, skills, and performance. I can't underscore that enough, especially right now, because what's going to make you stand out compared to the piles of resumes that recruiters are reviewing is what you've actually accomplished and how you are uniquely positioned to be the right candidate for the role they're looking to fill. I will always say, when possible, support with examples and metrics and results. For example, did you increase sales month over month to a certain percentage, and adding that actual data. You don't have to list your company name if that's confidential information, but listing that helps organizations see where you can drive impact and change and your ability to influence in an organization. So there's a lot of different ways that can look like. It can be percent growth, percent savings. If you've implemented a tool that has saved labor costs, there's a lot of different things that you can look like. Or if you've been a part of, if you've received an award or a campaign where you've had great success, those are all things that are definitely worth adding to your resume, even if it's not relevant to the industry that you're pursuing. And again, I can't say that enough. Because you have transferable skill sets, you all do. If I did from a spa salon industry to technology, couldn't be on opposite ends of the spectrum. You all have transferable skill sets, and those are really important to highlight on your resume. So definitely be sure to include those. A couple other things with regards to building or refreshing your resume is ensure that your resume reflects your understanding of the industry. And what I mean by that is do some industry research. If you are switching careers, or if you are going from a technology industry to a customer support industry, or if you're going from finance and accounting to healthcare, it's really important that you understand the lingo and the importance of this role that you're applying for in that organization. What does that role mean to the department? What does it mean to the organization? And how does it add value to the team? Now more than ever, when organizations are being asked to do more with less resources, your ability to demonstrate where you add value is going to be very important. And I would also say remove irrelevant information. As fun as it is to sit down and talk about yourself, and that will happen in an interview. It's not the place on a resume. If you have 6 seconds to capture a recruiter's attention, you don't want to spend it talking about your hobbies and what you enjoy doing in your free time. You want to talk about what you are effective at and how you will add value to that organization. So just a couple tips around updating your resume. there's not any questions on that one, we'll move on to the next one here. Before we jump into what organizations are looking for in today's world, I wanted to take a minute to talk about this new normal that we keep hearing about. It's new today, and it'll be new 2 weeks from now, and it'll be 2 months from now. I've talked about the analogy of, you know, the entire airline and aerospace industry changed after 9/11. It needed to change, it had to change. And we're going to experience something similar now, at least for the short term, and possibly even the long term. But there is going to be a change in what we see and how we manage business day to day. So wanted to talk about a couple observations and what this new normal looks like for an organization such as Blueprint. So first of all, there's an increased focus on flexibility and agility. What I mean by that is an organization's priorities are changing, potentially their funding is changing, their revenue might be changing. So they're being asked to pivot their priorities. And sometimes what that might mean is a project or a role that you've been pursuing for 2 or 3 months and you're almost to completion might take a drastic spin. And we've seen that with even some of our clients in what we would call the hospitality or entertainment industry. You know, that almost went dark. And so they're still alive and thriving, but their focus is entirely different on what they are looking to increase their revenue, how they can increase customers or guests to their locations. It all looks very different. And so they're dealing with that. So they need that flexibility and agility and getting on board with that. You know, we're seeing a lot of changes in the ways that employees interact with each other. Just a couple of examples that I've witnessed personally and I've experienced personally, and I've heard a lot of my colleagues and my clients talking about is there's an increased use of technology to stay connected and be highly communicative. And what I mean by that is where you used to be able to walk across the office and have a conversation, or, you know, hang out by the water cooler and have a conversation, and have your go-dos and then you go do. It's not as easy to do that anymore. I think my first 2 weeks from home, I had a series of incremental 15-minute phone calls just to touch base with people, and where I used to take for granted walking across the office, I have to be more intentional with my time in that way. So we're seeing an increased use of technology to help facilitate that. Our company is a huge advocate of the Teams, Microsoft Teams. We're a huge advocate of Slack, all different ways to stay connected, and where you would turn around and, you know, talk to somebody, now we just do a quick Slack and you can get back to that. We're seeing increased communication, and this is out of necessity as well. So it's not only important to be an effective communicator, but it's important that you are communicating very frequently. What we are seeing is 2 to 3 times above and beyond the prior standard that we used to have. So you used to hold a meeting and you'd have your takeaways. You know, now you're on a meeting and sometimes folks' cameras are on and sometimes they're off. So it's really important that you wrap that meeting up with action items. I call it my AOT, so action owner timeline. What are you going to do? Who's going to do it? And when are you going to have it done? So it's really important that you're communicating those. And then an increase in collaboration and teamwork. This almost goes without saying, and in an organization where I feel like we were highly collaborative and we had a strong sense of teamwork, I would say that's enhanced even more, particularly where we're seeing our clients and customers being asked to do more with less. They're leaning into organizations like Blueprint, which is a technology company, but we're also a consulting company and a services company. So it's super exciting, Nancy and Sarah, that you guys have somebody talking about that next week. That'll be a great value add. We're also seeing a greater focus on time management. Again, my calendar is probably OCD in terms of time management, but if I'm not giving myself time for myself to get projects done that I'm leading at the strategic level, and I'm not giving my employees enough time, then that's where we're going to see dips in productivity, and that's what every organization can't afford right now. So a greater focus on time management. We're also seeing employees, as an increase in technology across organizations, we're also seeing employees being more comfortable with technology, almost as a forcing function, right? Like you don't have a choice to, now that we're all working remote, you have to embrace technology rather than dismiss it. That's just not an option anymore. And then employees are improving their relationships with their colleagues. And this seems very nominal to mention, but it's important to note and recognize. We really are all in this together. And what I mean by that is we are starting to have greater empathy for each other, which provides an understanding, but where that also fuels how you work with others on your team. It gives you insight into what their today's reality is, which is very different from coming to work and working alongside somebody. So whether people are talking about their pets or their kids or their spouses or even grievances, it's allowing us to determine how we work with employees and to be more effective. So taking that into what does this mean? What does this mean for you guys? What are organizations looking for? Business as usual isn't really usual anymore. There's no usual, there's no normal, there's no standard. So again, we really, the bottom line is, again, the technical requirements aren't changing or trade specific requirements. So those are often being enhanced. So if you're not already using this time to brush up on those, this is a great time to do that. That there's fierce competition out there, right? People are losing their jobs not because of performance issues, but because of layoffs or cutbacks or furloughs. So it's really important that you come out of the gates stronger than ever before as well. So again, looking for that flexibility and agility as the changes in priority change, that often means a change in focus and workflow, and a lot of people have a problem with that change. So being flexible, learning how to deal with ambiguity and being comfortable with that. You've got to find a way, and literally anything goes today with regards to ambiguity. So you've got to find a way to get that clarity that you need so that you can move forward in the direction that aligns to the organizational focus areas and strategic initiatives. Creative problem solving. This also feels like something that's not new, but people are looking for ways to creatively solve problems. And I would say Blueprint's in that boat as well. We have a lot of our clients coming to us, and what was their normal and how they would normally solve a problem. They're coming to us to think outside the box. How can we use technology to accelerate ourselves even further, to drive revenue and customers and sustainability and repeatability? So creative problem solving, it's kind of like back to fourth grade, as how do you creative problem solve and work together with each other. Willingness to take on multiple roles. I actually was on a phone call with one of our clients yesterday, and it's interesting because even as technology is more impactful now than ever, we're still seeing people kind of put a pause or a freeze on any major initiatives because there's just an uncertainty and an unknown. So what they are asking is people within the organization to take on more. So what used to be maybe one consolidated role is being dispersed among multiple individuals, and they're taking on more and wearing multiple different hats. That's actually increased more now than I felt at the beginning of the pandemic that we're currently in the middle of. Again, effective communication. This is both written and oral. It sounds like the start to like a high school course or something, but effective communication is so important now more than ever. When you're not having that face-to-face time, you don't see the eye contact, you don't see the body language. It's really important that your communication is super effective. An eagerness to learn new technologies and skills. Again, whether it's because your organization has adapted technology and it's a forcing function for you to learn it, or if you're trying to get out of, in front of, and be that unique qualified candidate, it's really important that now more than ever, if you've had an interest in taking a course or a training, this is a great time to do that. And I'll talk a little bit about that in my next slide here.
Hey,
and
Heather.
then resilience. What's it?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead, and then I have a question.
Oh, sure, yeah. And then resilience. This feels new. I mean, we obviously want our employees to be able to weather tough times, but this is a tough time. I think we can all be honest and say we've never experienced anything quite like this, and hopefully, knock on wood, we won't in the future. But what we really need is people to be able to lead and weather through that tough time, maintain motivation, maintain productivity, and recover quickly. Organizations at the executive leadership level, they're making strategic decisions to keep their doors open. And so what they need in their workers is the ability to push through those tough times, talk about it, communicate around it, and bounce back from it. And there are unknown times now, and there will be in the future, but really resilient team members and leaders are what organizations are looking for, probably now more than ever. And Nancy, you had a question there?
Yeah, Annette in the chat wants to know,
yeah.
do you think it's worth mentioning in a resume if the individual has had experience with remote work in the past?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now more than ever. I think it demonstrates a strength, especially right now. Blueprint, interestingly, I'll give my for example here with Blueprint and how it relates to the hiring market right now is we were a very face-to-face company. Our executive leadership team liked seeing people working in the office, collaborating, almost like seeing business happen. That was really important to our organization. And then as a forcing function, we had to learn how to be as productive or more productive in a remote work environment. Fortunately for us, a good portion of our employees, specifically in our South Central region, they already worked from home. So they're going, hey, this is already what we do. So we were learning a lot from them, but the ability for people to work effectively from home and demonstrate productivity, collaboration, effective communication is important now more than ever. Again, we might be unique in that we liked that in-person communication, but even we're seeing increased productivity across Blueprint by people working from home. So it's definitely, if you've got that experience in your tool belt, it's important to bring that out right now.
Thanks. And the other question she had was, do you have any examples or ideas about how to demonstrate flexibility when you're like either in your resume or when you talk to people?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm going to save that to the end because that's actually going to be the conversation starter for the hangout sessions, the breakout sessions. But yeah, there's a couple ways to demonstrate, or at least in that skills section of your resume, stating that you are flexible or that you've worked in an agile environment historically. And I'll use myself as an example. Is I have a very specific role in my organization right now. When I first started at Blueprint, we were 60 or 70 employees, and I wore multiple different hats. Because of that, there's very few roles at Blueprint I haven't done, but the ones that I've done well, and I could bounce back into that right now. If we had to make any drastic changes, I could bounce back into that right now. So demonstrating through your career history that you've been agile and flexible within your different roles, but also just stating it in that skills and capabilities area that you are effective. A phrase that I use often is I'm effective when I have multiple and competing demands. Multiple and competing demands, I think we've all experienced before. You've got two deadlines, they're exact same time, which is going to take prioritization, and how are you going to navigate but still meet the deadlines of both of those. So that's one phrase that I've used frequently. Good question. Yeah, Sarah, do you have a question?
I do, yes. So the last two slides really talked about trends that are happening right now. And there's some pretty awesome bullet points within there. Would you suggest people put those on their resume with examples of, we just talked about flexibility, but when they were comfortable with being ambiguous, problem solving, all of those types, is this all things that should be in the resume?
There is the resume, and something we're obviously not talking about today is the cover letter. So a lot of organizations will accept a cover letter. And I think in a cover letter is where you can demonstrate through an actual, for example, or demonstrate through talking through some of these bullet points where you have experience and history with that. Where you can fold it into your resume, I do think it's important. I'll say again, though, you don't want to overemphasize these things at the expense of what those minimum requirements for the job are. And we're even seeing right now a lot of job descriptions changing a little bit. What I used to say is make sure that your resume reflects what they're looking for in the job description. Even now, we are seeing an increase in job descriptions asking for that ability to be flexible and pivot quickly, effectiveness working from home, effective communication as minimum requirements, where we used to not see that. It was just an expectation or a given. So it is important to include it in your resume, but not at the expense of cutting out what you're actually being hired to do. Awesome. All right. So what can you do to maintain relevancy in the market? And this kind of will help address some of the questions Sarah and Nancy and the audience here on the phone have been asking. I think it's really important to update your resume first and foremost. That's what this workshop is all about, and the others that the Swing Shift offers. The Swing Shift has also partnered with Blueprint around updating your LinkedIn profile. Your LinkedIn profile is such a great tool and a resource, and you can link it directly to your resume, but that is where you can go, and I'm not going to dive into it here. Different session, different topic, but there's so many tools on LinkedIn that you can use, whether it's recommendations, whether it's putting a quote or a statement from a former employee on there. Those are the moments in time where you can actually highlight all of the things that we're putting here. Heather was great in driving our initiatives and being able to pivot quickly while still driving results and effectiveness. Like, that's a statement that somebody can write for you and promote you on your LinkedIn. What we say in our LinkedIn session is write it for them. Write what you want them to say and say, hey, I'm looking to beef up my LinkedIn profile, ensure that I'm relevant in today's market. Here's the jobs I'm looking for. If you're comfortable, I've drafted this. Tweak it if you want to, but LinkedIn is a great tool that supplements and augments your resume, and they look and feel different, but LinkedIn, you can get a lot more personal information plugged into there. So definitely. We talked about this earlier on, customize your resume. It's really important to have multiple different versions. What a lot of people do is they take their resume and then they start emailing it out to all of these organizations, and they're ignoring the fact that each organization might be looking for something slightly different. It might say program manager or project manager or data engineer, but that means something different to every organization. So really understanding what it means to the organization you're applying for, and be intentful around how you're applying for that role. You have that 6 seconds to capture their attention. So speak in their terms. Network. This is a great tool right here in front of you guys. You're doing it right now. You're having the ability to network. Networking is so important. And I will say now more than ever, my LinkedIn, my feeds are flooded with networking opportunities. And we actually are increasing that at Blueprint as well. We used to do about one webinar or network opportunity a month, and we are certainly working with our clients and partners to see how we can increase that. So whether it's internal or external, you'll see a lot more online networking opportunities such as this. So congrats to you guys all. You've already checked that box. Good job. Research the industry or company you're applying for. I've already spoken about that, but it is really important that you understand what role you're applying for and how it's relevant to that organization. This one, invest in yourself. I think this is so important, and it seems like a no-brainer. It seems like that's what we do all the time. That's why we're here on this call. That's why we're updating our resume. But when I say invest in yourself, if there's a skill or a trait that you've either not dusted off in a long time or that you've expressed an interest in, now is a great time to take advantage of that. And I don't just say now, assuming that you haven't already, but there are several training and education platforms online that are either offering free courses or drastically discounted courses. At Blueprint, we actually took part in Pluralsight, which is a training platform. They have over 7,000 topics, and they have over, I want to say like over 500 contributors to those topics. But it is a platform that you can go on and you can search anything you want to. So you can go on and search agile training methodology or agile approach, and it'll populate with so much different information and practicals, hands-on activities that you can do. They offered the entire month of April free to anybody who hadn't used their platform before. We're seeing a lot more of that, and we're seeing a lot of discounted rates as people are turning to invest in themselves to grow in their skills, certifications. It's a great opportunity to do that right now. And then update your references. Now more than ever, whether it's through networking or through your references, what people have to say about you is being heard. So on the networking side of the house, oftentimes, if you have a personal connection into an organization and they can give you a reference, or if you have a professional reference that you can add in or reflect on your LinkedIn page, people see those out of the gates, and it gains the attention of a recruiter a little bit more, specifically if you have an internal referral from an organization that's highlighted. Recruiters these days have stacks and stacks and stacks of resumes to look through. So it's important that you're doing what you can to set yourself apart. Any questions here in the chat, or Nancy or Sarah, before we move on?
Yeah, there's one question from the chat that says, if you're in the process of taking an online course but haven't received the certification yet, is it worth mentioning on your resume?
Yeah. Because a lot of times when you think about a resume, you put certified in, or finished college or finished course in, and you'll put a date or you'll reference certification. It's absolutely okay to put in progress. I actually just hired somebody. He started 2 weeks ago, and he put something as in progress on his resume, which I appreciated, but it was also a conversation starter for me when I did get on the phone with him to understand what his career trajectory was and how that might align to our organization. So there's a lot of benefits in doing it. So yes, if you have something in progress, definitely say that. I'll use a phrase from one of our clients the other day is, if you do put something on your resume, make sure that you're versed in it. Even if you're not certified yet, you should be able to speak the language and understand it. So if you're literally just starting like day one today in a course, you might want to wait to put that on your resume unless you're confident and you can speak to the fact that you're pursuing a certification or a course. But I would just be mindful if you put it on your resume as in progress, or that it's something there, you may be asked a question around it. So ensure that you're fluent and you can speak that talk. Great. All right. So before we wrap up and move into the breakout sessions, I just wanted to talk a minute about what industries are hiring. And you'll look at these, and we've got customer service, we've got warehouse, shipping, and delivery, as we're all kind of shelter in home or whatever different states are calling it. We're seeing an increase in ordering online and shipping, so that makes sense. Accounting and finance, as people are moving more to remote transactions. Healthcare, obviously, to support the pandemic that we're in right now. There's a lot of hiring and going on in the healthcare, and I'm not talking doctors and nurses. I mean, that too, but there's a lot of healthcare roles out there. We're seeing an increase in government jobs, which is interesting because we started this some conversations with some governmental agencies just before COVID pandemic took place, and they're still moving and they're actually accelerating. So that's an interesting one as the government is trying to support all of the changes that are taking place right now, both in how we work and in the unemployment rates and what opportunities exist. And then obviously technology organizations like Blueprint. We have seen an uptick, although a shift in what organizations are reaching out to us for. We have a product on the market called Conduit, and what's interesting is it was our reach outs on it were a little bit at a lull right before COVID hit, and we saw an immediate spike in reach outs of people wanting to know. It's a data visualization tool, and people wanting to know how they can visualize their data to make real-time decisions. And so that was an interesting connection. Whether it was related or not, a little bit difficult to tell, but for us, it was an interesting observation. And the one thing I want to note around these industries that are hiring is where these organizations are growing and hiring, so too is the infrastructure to support them. So you might say, I don't have experience in the healthcare industry. I don't have industry and I don't have experience in customer service or even accounting and finance, but where those roles specifically or those industries specifically are growing, the organization that supports them behind them also has to grow. So that's where skill sets like BI or program project management or HR or marketing, all of these roles that support those organizations are also growing. So while these industries might not be where you have skills and experience and you're going to have to make an industry pivot, your skills are still very transferable to these organizations that are growing to support the needs that we're experiencing right now. Awesome. So that wraps up that. Before we jump into the breakout sessions, are there any questions before we wrap up? Are there any questions before we talk about the prompts that I can answer for anyone?
No, I think that, Heather, that was great. I think we had a lot of questions along the way. If anybody wants to unmute themselves and ask, now would be a good time.
Yeah. While people are thinking about that,
right.
Oh, did somebody unmute themselves?
Nope,
okay.
Just me.
Sorry. What I will say is, and this question came up earlier, but as we move into the breakout sessions, I've had this question just as was asked earlier, is how do I take all of these things that seemingly feel non-tangible or something that's difficult to put into a resume and demonstrate value? How do I take that and put it in my resume or on LinkedIn or in a cover letter? So some of you who've attended these sessions before may already be doing some of these things. So we'd love to hear in our breakout sessions what you guys are doing or what you're seeing out there or feedback that you've gotten. And then I would also just love for you guys to use this as a brainstorming time of how can you take your experience, network with each other, how can you take that experience and integrate it into your resume in a way that still demonstrates that you drive value, that you have the minimum skill sets required for the position, and that you are uniquely positioned to be that right person for the role. So thank you everyone for joining us this morning, joining me this morning, and listen to me talk for a little bit. My contact information I can make available if anybody has questions as a follow-up, but just really appreciate the Swing Shift bringing me back again, and you guys all for spending some time with us this morning.
Heather, thank you again. This is, I think this has been super informative and so on point and timely.
Good. I'm glad. I'm glad.
Yeah.
So let me see if I can stop my screen share here.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put everyone into breakout rooms. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And Heather is actually going to be joining each of the rooms to just kind of listen to what you have to say. And if you have any questions for her, she can answer those there.
Great.
All right, Heather, that was great. Thank you again.
So Heather, did you get a notification for breakout room 2? Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, she's mute.
And it muted me too. It did. It sent me to a chat room, and then it sent me back. It said sending you back to main meeting or something like that. So
okay, let me withdraw your co-host permission. I think that might not let you go. Okay, I'm sending you out.
all right. Thanks,
So
ladies.
you'll have like 2 minutes, okay?
Okay,
in
perfect.
each. Okay.
Pull me out.
All right. Thank you again, Heather. That really was
Yeah,
fantastic.
Good, good. I'm glad. I'm waiting to be shipped out here.